Hello, IB students, and welcome to the video to review the last DYRT test for the awakening, those 6 questions at the end. You only had to select 2 to answer, but I want to make sure that we go through all the answers together here very quickly. Number 1, what are 2 scenes from the end of the novel that involve birds that are significant, and why or how are they significant? If you remember from your DYRT prep sheet, I had you look for 4 scenes in particular, but the 2 that I want to talk about very quickly are the ones that people either didn't notice or didn't kind of like write down. So the first of the 2 is the scene where Mademoiselle Rice actually is kind of like caressing, and I think she kisses as well Edna's shoulder blades. And it's kind of mentioned that there she's kind of looking for wings, right? So that's the first time. So it's not the first time, but it's like the first time in those last couple section of chapters where you see that Kate Chopin is making this parallel between Edna and a bird. Where that is even more significant, or where the motif kind of finally comes to full fruition and like completion, is right before she steps into the water and drowns herself. There's a description of a bird with a broken wing that like flies in a circle and then plummets into the ocean to die. And again, making the kind of connection between birds and Edna. If you remember, and if you have a time, go back to the very beginning of the book. The very opening scene of the book is a parrot speaking in a cage, and like look at the things that it's saying. Do the translation. It's kind of interesting. Kate Chopin has been hinting at this like the entire way through. She really just kind of like hits it home. Her message really hits home, excuse me, towards the end of the novel when she goes a little more heavy on the bird motif. Number 2, this is what song does Victor sing at Edna's dinner party, and why does it upset her so much? Victor sings the song that Robert and she like really like. It's the one that Mademoiselle Rice played for her. It's the one that begins with "Ah, si tu savais," right? If only you could see what your eyes are doing to me. It's kind of like the gist of the song, and it's this idea about attraction and longing for somebody. It gets her so upset because Robert still isn't home. She's still missing him, and basically it's kind of like her song in some ways, like with Robert. And she doesn't want Victor to be the one singing it because that kind of pollutes the spirit of the song in some ways for her. Number 3, what's the reason Robert gives Edna for his return from Mexico, and why is Edna so disappointed with his answer? Basically, Robert says that the reason he came back was because he was finished with his business in Mexico. It upsets Edna, or why she's so disappointed, was because she thought it was because of her. She was kind of hoping that it was because of her. So when he says, that, oh, well, no, I just came back because, I got tired of the business that I was doing there, right? It's just a letdown for her. And it makes her, in that moment, makes her feel like, maybe she's been thinking about him more than he's been thinking about her, which we find out is not the case, right? Number 4, what does Edna confront Robert about at Katish's cafe, and how does their encounter lead to a major turning point in their relationship? Basically, Edna confronts Robert about his trying to avoid her. She keeps running into him, but she makes a point about how the only time she can actually get a hold of him is if she runs into him by accident. And she gets the impression that basically he's ducking her, right? That he's trying to avoid her. The encounter leads to a major turning point in their relationship when they finally kind of admit their feelings for one another, right? Robert goes back to the house, the pigeon house with Edna. And there's like an admission of like, while I was in Mexico, I was thinking of you the entire time. The whole reason I left was because of you. You're a married woman. And, I didn't want to steal you away from your husband, etc. Which is interesting how Edna reacts to that conversation as well. Number 5, what does Edna receive from Robert at the end of the novel, and how does this show that he is less enlightened or less awakened than Edna? Edna receives a letter from Robert that basically says that he can't be around her because he is too kind of worried about what other people will say. And he's worried about ruining her reputation. The interesting part about it that Edna kind of like balked at before, she was in the middle of that conversation. She had to leave to go help Adele, who was giving birth, right? And then when she comes back, but the interesting thing that Robert says before she leaves, that Edna says, is that, I'm not a possession. You wouldn't be taking me away from Leonce. Like, I'm my own person. And it's clear that Robert really doesn't understand that, right? That basically Edna starting a relationship with Robert would really be no better than being in the relationship with Leonce, right? He's still somebody who is operating under these social standards and these rules in society that keep women as secondary citizens and that think of women as property, right? And so basically, she's really let down by the fact that he still thinks that way, right? That he can only think in the way that society has taught him to think, basically. So therein lies like how he's less awakened than she is, right? She kind of recognizes that the systems in place are designed to keep people down, specifically women. And she's really just kind of disappointed that Robert, his letter at least, indicates that he really just can't even understand that concept at all, right? That he is a product of the society in which he lives. And then number 6, right? What thoughts run through Edna's head during her final swim, and why does she kill herself? Her final thoughts they're an echo of the thoughts that she described earlier in the book when she was a little kid in Kentucky and when she was kind of running through the tall grass that was above her head, right? And it's Kentucky bluegrass, so you're supposed to get this image of, even though it's grass, it's a lot like water, right? So when she was a little kid, she would wade through this grass the same way that she swims out into the water. So she thinks about her times when she was a kid. She thinks about the soldier that visited her house, who was her first kind of love infatuation. She thinks about her children and like what leaving them behind with the nurse will mean. And she thinks about her husband. And basically, all those thoughts kind of like culminate, right? Everything is happening, and as you notice, right, all those things kind of keep rushing back, and it's written in such a way that's supposed to mimic like we're told what basically happens, that your life flashes before your eyes, right before you pass away and die. The trickiest part to answer this question is, why does she kill herself, right? If you wrote down that she killed herself because she was depressed about Robert, you're wrong. It's just wrong, right? Because there would be her just kind of, that would be an awful way for Kate Chopin, who wants women to be independent, to end her book, right? She doesn't want her main character to kill herself because a man rejected her. That's the worst possible kind of interpretation, right? And unfortunately, that's the one that a lot of people come away with because they're not paying close enough attention. So the reason that Edna kills herself is because she realizes that every single man she ever meets will be just like Leonce and will be just like Robert, right? And that the world basically is not ready for her, and that she does not have a place in the world, right, where she can be happy. She will always be kind of tied to or expected, right, to have a man with her and like tied to her. And even if that wasn't the case, right, she still has familial obligations, right? She still has these 2 kids that she would still have to take care of, and they, in some ways, are a weight that are dragging her down and like limiting her independence. So the reason she ends up kind of killing herself is because she is so incredibly devoted towards being this independent person, right? And again, we saw that earlier when she swam as far out as she did, and it was like this independent act. She does that exact same thing again because she wants to reclaim that independence. And basically, when you look at the symbolism of it, right, that independent, that seeking independence in the end is what really kills her, right? Because society will not let a woman, in this book, right, the message is that society will not let a woman gain that independence, right? That it is impossible. I hope you found these answers informative. If you want to talk more about these, that's fine. We'll have time during like student support and whatnot starting next week. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your break. See you soon.